Hi, good morning. It's Gene from maverickstar Observatory. Thank you for being with me. And also, before we get on with this video, and I've got some important information I want to just go over again with you guys so that you understand exactly what it is you're looking at. But before we do, big thanks to those few people that have been supporting us over the last couple of days. We've got a couple of days left in the month, and obviously a few people have realised what we do here has value and is important, because at the end of the day, there isn't no other organisation that are joining the dots quite in the way that we are. We've been studying here at the observatory now for 10 years, the magnetic anomaly that has been taking place. And we've really become an observatory over the last 3 or 4 years since we've been, building equipment here and monitoring what's been going on. If you ask me what's going on with the climate, I will point straight to the magnetic reversal. And I think a lot of you guys, particular farmers, if you're listening, will know exactly what I'm talking about. Over the last 30 years is really where we saw the biggest changes in our climate, and it is at the same time that we've been covering more distance in the migration of the magnetic North Pole in less time. So that magnetic North Pole has speeded up in the last 30 years, and at the same time the climate has changed. Now, these maps that I've pointed out here, I've picked some really good maps for you. First of all, top left hand side, we've got temperature, and I've added the coldest regions on there with those red circles. I've added slightly the lesser warmer regions on there with the arrows, and I know some of you are going to jump already to the lower left hand side image that Swarm provided a couple of years ago and recognise why it's warmer in those regions. But I don't think we would get 5 out of 5 if what we was saying is true here, if it wasn't. We've got 5 locations on the earth we can point to with these circles and these arrows. The circles point out the highest magnetic intensity as well as the lowest temperature, and the arrows point to those regions of low magnetic intensity, in particular the one that's over Brazil, the South Atlantic anomaly. And by no coincidence is that the case. Magnetism seems to be the control of the sub-zero temperatures on our planet, and that's why before the 1900s, before the magnetic poles started to migrate, we have enjoyed Arctic circles both over the northern hemisphere and over the southern hemisphere. When we look at the the right hand top map of the intensity, we can see that the same locations where the highest intensity is over the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere is where the lowest temperatures are recorded on our planet. That is by no coincidence, guys. That is something, can you believe it, that these big organisations that receive millions and millions of pounds worth of funding have not joined the dots on yet. We live in really, really awkward and strange times. Not only are they taking the money and justifying it with poor results, literally they give us very little information on what's taking place with our earth and the climate, and they're too frightened to say what the cause is, although we can say they did in the last 10 years blame it on CO2 in the atmosphere. But we have proved again, time and time again, that we are at record low levels of CO2 in our atmosphere. And it's not a bad thing if they increase. I have brought the equipment, the CO2 detector, which measures by the parts per million the CO2 in the atmosphere, and I've showed you what's in your living rooms right now. Where you are sat at your computer, it is probably 700 parts per million to 1500 parts per million, depending on how many people are in that room with you. If you go on a crowded train, that can easily exceed 2500 parts per million. It is not what drives our climate. CO2, by the way, has remained around 415 parts per million for the last 6 months that we've been monitoring it. I would say that was stable at the moment, and it wouldn't be a bad thing if it increased. We go back to the Jurassic periods of times in our earth. This was the point in time where trees grew enormously wide enormously tall, as well as everything else was massive in them days. Could it be because it had the advantage of more CO2? What these vegetations need to grow is CO2. If we drop the levels of CO2 to, 200, 250, we'll stop it in its tracks growing. We'll reverse the process of the biodiversity across the range in vegetation over our planet. That is not a good place to go, guys. If we increase it by another 500 parts per million, we'll improve the greenness of our planet. Now, you tell me, which would you prefer? The thing is, if we shut down the biodiversity of plant species on our planet because we reduce the CO2, we kill ourselves. It's as simple as that. I would argue with any scientist today and prove that point. And I will argue likewise with any scientist today that CO2 does not drive the climate. The cart does not pull the horses. Yeah? What we're seeing is CO2 slightly get a little bit higher, but temperatures are coming down, so something else is interfering with our climate. And I think I've nailed it on the head here with these maps, and I've showed you what's driving our climate. Another thing that is becoming common in this day and age, and you can do this yourself, guys, is just type in floods. After you've watched this video on Google, do a Google search or whatever search engine you've got, type in floods 2020. You will see that we are living in a time where floods are becoming more apparent. Now, there is a reason for this, and you're not going to be surprised when I say it's down to the poles migrating on our planet, and in turn a weakening of the magnetosphere, allowing more cosmic rays into our upper atmosphere, which form seeding platforms for raindrops to form. And if there's more of these platforms in our upper atmosphere, there's going to be more rain, and at some point it's going to precipitate and cause flash floods, mudslides, etc., etc. It also coincides with something else which is probably rare at this time, which is a grand solar minimum. And guess what? That also, for the last, by no coincidence, 33 years, has been declining the levels of solar output. Now, I haven't seen anything that connects the solar output to the changing of the Earth's magnetic field. I haven't seen that, and we could easily go back to the Maunder minimum and the Dalton minimum to confirm that there was no attempted magnetic reversal or even an excursion at that point in time during the Dalton and the Maunder minimums. So I don't feel I need to do that. I think the reason why we are facing so much trouble with our climate today is because of two things coinciding side by side with each other. First, the Earth is going through a magnetic reversal, and the last time it did this was 12,000 years. That was not a completed magnetic reversal, it was an excursion. This is a failed reversal. But when we had a last magnetic reversal, that was 780,000 years ago, and we haven't got no recorded data of what took place other than what we can find in the paleology or the fossil record. That's all we can go on, core samples. And yes, I'm aware of what someone put in the comments, that core samples were done on Arctic Circle, and we found that there was pollen and plant species beneath deep the ice, showing that that region of our Earth was tropical at some point. So it means that the ice caps and the Arctic circles move around on our planet, so it seems, alongside with the magnetic poles, and we can prove that with the maps that we're looking at today. And I can give you a quick heads up as what's going to happen, and I've got to say this, it's not good news for the United Kingdom and Europe, which have currently enjoyed, for the last 780,000 years maybe, regions on our planet that have been protected from high intensity magnetism, and as a result of that it has led to habitable climates. I've got to say, they're going to change, and we're slowly starting to see this happen. We know that the intensity over Canada is dropping off, and that is why from the 1900s to the present day we are starting to see the magnetic pole migrate over the northern hemisphere. What we're seeing is it move to the epicenter on the right hand top chart somewhere in Russia, and you can see by no coincidence that that is one of the coldest regions measured yesterday on our planet. So current information showing, you know, the reality of what is happening with our magnetic poles on our Earth and how they are changing and moving the Arctic climates around. Why do I say it's going to be bad news for England and Europe? Well, when the dissipation completes over Canada and moves over to Russia, we're no longer going to enjoy that ridge where the top arrow is pointing on the top right hand side chart. And that will mean it will plummet us into a lot cooler temperatures over Europe, including the United Kingdom. It could be good news for Canada. I can see Canada slowly, and I've heard people that live there say to me that over the last 10 years it is starting to get gradually warmer over there. But over the other side of the world, where the majority of inhabitants live, it's not good news. Again, you know, it is really important to, you know, not just mention this once and let it drop. You know, we're coming towards the end of 2020. We're in a lot of mess. And, you know, sometimes I have moments of genius where, you know, I seem to have figured it all out, and then next minute I think, oh, no, it can't be that. But, you know, sitting there looking at this chart, knowing I wanted to tell you guys how important this was, I also realised that, you know, we have a problem. And it is not nothing to do with the events that are going to follow in the years to come. It is to do with our attitudes and the way we build things today, and it is all very rigid and non-flexible, and we do not flex around changing climates, neither of our ancestors. And that is why, you know, the Egyptians were so you know, obsessed with climate and the stars and knowing, you know, the positions of where we were in our orbit around the sun and celestial bodies. It was indications of them to know when to put the food in the ground and when to take it out. Over here in the UK, we've got Stonehenge, which perfectly aligns with the winter solstice, which we've just experienced over the last few days, and the summer solstice. Perfectly and accurately, still to this day, that is the case. And again, what does that tell us? That they was interested in seasons, and the Mayans likewise. You know, the problem is when you build cities, you can't pick them up tomorrow and move them. But in order for you to survive the future, you need to be more flexible, and you need to be able to migrate, just like all our other biodiversity does on this planet. When the area becomes unsustainable for the amount of particular species, the only way to win at that point in time is find other hunting ground, other ground where you can put your nest in that tree. And we are no different to all the migratory species. The only thing that stops us is the fact that we build cities, and they're not very easy to walk away, especially when you own property. It's not easy to walk away, is it? I know a lot of people, if we went into an ice age tomorrow, would still stay in their homes until they ran out of food before they thought to themselves, we need to get out. We need to, you know, cut our losses, and we need to find somewhere where we can thrive and survive. Well, I've given you a heads up. I've told you, if you live in Europe, if you live in Russia, it's going to get a lot colder. And the other problem is where do you migrate on this planet? Because the other problems we have are flash floods and droughts. And those are unpredictable because of the climate has been affected that much by a magnetic pole reversal and a sun which has chosen to go into an all-time minimum. These are the things, you know, I want you to really grasp. And, you know, shame on those organisations that have not made this information available to you guys, because you have had wages, pensions and you took an oath, just like I did as a scientist, to do the right thing for mankind, and you failed. You've taken the money, you've taken the bribes, and you've gone along with the agenda that was set before you to do so. I just say shame on you for that. And for you guys that benefit from this channel, you know, I can only thank you enough, especially for those that support it, because this is critical. And as you know, the months go on from this point in time, it's going to become more critical. And that's why I've taken it upon myself next year to really drive out more equipment into the field, especially those regions where we have an interest in, Brazil and Russia. If it means I've got to go and get visas to go and visit these countries and chat up some locals there that are suitable for us to have our magnetometers there, I'm going to do it, because we need to know what's going on in the lowest magnetic intensity and the increasing highest magnetic intensity, and that covers Russia and Brazil. That is our target for next year, guys. We are, I hope, going to hit the road running next year. But this is not a time for people to, you know, not support what we do here. I hope you realise, with what I've showed you over the last couple of days, the importance of having an observatory which is informant to the to the public, not the government, because you ain't going to get this information anywhere else. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only observatory which has the equipment specifically monitoring the magnetic North Pole and these intensities, and we are very lucky to have some superstars on board prepared to stand here with us and record the information at their locations in Arizona, in Canada, in Perth, Australia, on the Gold Coast of Australia, and in Hong Kong. So, you know, guys, we are coming towards the end of 2020. And thank God for that, because, you know, I just hope things do start to get better. I really do. And, you know, I'm not going to take up your Sunday too much. And, you know, it is Sunday, isn't it? I do believe it's Sunday. Oh, here we go. You see, I don't even know what day it is anymore. I've been doing this too long. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to take up your Monday too much, guys. I'm just going to mention there's a link there. You know, get behind the observatory. Help support us, and we can keep you being informed on this rare anomaly. And I think we're doing a good job. I think, guys, as always, bye for now.